if anybody has any 3x5 cards, we're doing to avoid some repetition, some repetitive questions. We're just asking that you write the questions down on a 3x5 card, and I'll go ahead and ask them. I'll ask if you're here, and you can wave at me, and then I'm sure there'll be plenty of time at the end to provide any additional comments. My name's Mark Lessig. I'm the county administrator. And we appreciate everybody coming tonight. Obviously, if you've showed up here, you're feeling some emotion about this, or you're looking for additional information. And I know that I appreciate you coming here, and I'm sure that the county commissioners also appreciate having you here. We did this last night in Meadville, obviously much closer to the proposed location. But tonight, starting with Mr. Dick Fox, who's going to give a presentation of the overall project. We do have some folks here from the Historical Society that represent the interests of the Tar Mansion there in Meadville as well. Appreciate you guys coming again, Josh. Thanks. So without any further delay, if you have any additional questions, just grab a card, write your name on there, because I'm going to call you, and just wave at me. And if we need to amplify your question or your comment, we will. But at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Chairman Wiederspan for some opening comments, and then he'll turn it over to Mr. Fox.
On behalf of the county commissioner, I'd just like to thank everybody for coming out tonight. These plans that will be shared tonight, nothing's been decided yet. That's why we're having this public meeting and the one last night in Meadville, so we could have some input, try to answer some questions, and we can take those comments and back and make any adjustments that may be necessary. And I'd also like to introduce Vice Chairman Commissioner Lynch.
Greetings, guys.
Our Secretary, Commissioner Allen. Like I said, certainly thank you for being here, and this time I'll turn it over to Dick Fox from Laura Murphy Fox, and he'll explain the plan for us.
Mark, thanks a lot, but nobody in Titusville called me Mr. Fox. They're used to seeing me banging around in an old farm truck, and Mr. just doesn't fit. I think it's worthwhile to back up and give you a little bit of a history of how the commissioners have gotten to where they have, because it's been best part of 4 years now since we became involved in trying to plan for the future facility needs for Crawford County. And in that period of time, I think this is probably the 6th or 7th public meeting we've had scattered around the county, because what happens is you develop the information to a certain level, and you have a meeting, and it raises questions, and so you develop at another level, and you have another set of meetings, and they raise different questions, and you kind of keep going this way. Hopefully, the circles come in toward the center, and eventually you end up with the best compromise available. And of course, a compromise is defined as a solution which everybody is equally unhappy with. So, we're working our way towards the best compromise we can come up with. In 2010, the previous Board of Commissioners hired us to do a study of the facility needs for Crawford County. They went through quite a process of requesting qualifications. They did interviews, and we were very happy that, along with a number of consultants, one of whom is a national expert in courthouse facilities, we were hired to undertake the study. That Board of Commissioners had just purchased the Talon property. And for those of you who are Titusville folks, the Talon property is up on the hill about a half a mile away from the existing courthouse in a mostly residential area. And the building had gone between being abandoned and trying to be operated by the Meadville Redevelopment Authority and being quasi-abandoned. It was a mess. And there were some problems. It was really going nowhere. So the commissioners wanted to see if perhaps that would be a way for them to consolidate county operations. At that point in time, Most of the county operations were located in 7 different buildings scattered around Meadville. And those had just kind of happened over the years because as a need came up and something, it couldn't be accommodated in the courthouse, whatever board of commissioners happened to be in place at the time, grabbed whatever space happened to be available at the time, and it just kind of developed. It's clearly not a very efficient way to run a county government. It's difficult for the court systems when they have domestic relations several blocks away and juvenile probation another several blocks away. Trying to schedule all the things they have to schedule is really difficult. So the idea was to try to consolidate those, to perhaps spin off those properties and put that value toward the cost of renovations and additions, and also to create some savings both functionally and in terms of all the other sorts of operational aspects that go along with owning buildings. So we met with all the department heads. We looked at all the national standards. We worked out a final program of what spaces the county could reasonably expect to satisfy their needs for the immediate future, for 25, 30 years out, and then to have a long-range plan out beyond that if additional space was needed, or if in fact less space ended up being needed. We want to have a fairly flexible plan. We settled on about 12 different alternate plans that ranged all the way from moving everything up to the Talon building to trying to build everything on the courthouse site, to going out in a cornfield somewhere outside of town, which actually we couldn't do, but it was a baseline scenario. And one of the scenarios was do nothing. The do nothing scenario is not really a do nothing scenario. The do nothing scenario means you continue to pay high costs for capital maintenance, high costs for utilities. You have to continue to suffer with the inefficiencies of the existing building structure. It was pretty clearly not something that was going to solve the problem. You just couldn't kick the can down the road another 10 or 15 years. The start from scratch solution was a big solution. That was about a $68 million project. In fact, the projects ranged from about $46 million to about $66 million. And at that time, we were looking at all the departments and we were solving all the parking needs and trying to put together an overview of that. The commissioners looked at the report and said, all right, we need, and in fact, I think that report, we had a series of town meetings just to present the findings. And then the commissioners appointed a committee, a citizen advisory committee made up of folks from all over the county, from different walks of life, different areas of expertise, to get together and come back to review this report, come back to the commissioners with some recommendations. That committee started meeting, I think it was in October, November, through to about February or March. It's somewhere in that range. And the first thing that committee did was familiarize themselves with the needs at the courthouse. Because most of us go over there to buy a doe license or a dog license or maybe record something. We don't spend a lot of time in the courthouse. And there's some pretty scary places in that courthouse. There's a whole 911 emergency communication system that sits right underneath a main plumbing set of waste pipes that were last renovated in 1954. There's a lot of stuff. The public defender has to step over a steam line to get to his office and then duck under the next one as he goes in his doorway. There's a lot of things that are really not appropriate, frankly not legal. I know that when this committee first started meeting, and Jim was on that committee, he probably attest to some of the opinions that folks brought with them to that first meeting. there were a lot of people who came to that meeting expecting to be in opposition to doing anything, because it wasn't a good time in the economy to be trying to look at spending money. And about 3 weeks later, after looking at the information and becoming familiar with the needs and the existing conditions, the committee was unanimous that there was not a do-nothing scenario that made sense for the county. Now we could get down to the business of trying to figure out which scenario made the most sense. The committee really did a good job in terms of looking at all of the needs and sorting out the ones that really had the most immediate need. One of the very first things they did was recommend that the Human Services Department, which is a large department currently housed in rented space that was designed specifically for them, stay in that space, because frankly the rent wouldn't amortize the cost of providing them with new space. And besides, this is a set of activities that's essentially funded through the state, and if the state ever changed their mind on funding, which happens now and then, it would be a fairly easy solution to cut back on the amount of space that was needed to fit the amount of funding that was available. So a big chunk of the square footage we were originally planning for went out. The other thing that the committee did, which made a lot of sense, was to focus on the cost of renovation versus the cost of new construction, and try to come up with some plans that maximized the use of the existing space, which was cheaper than building new. And they looked at different combinations of those. They ended up with two scenarios that they liked. The least expensive scenario was to take the entire judicial center and move it up to the Allen building and utilize the existing courthouse for the administrative center. That was the least cost solution. And that cost, we were looking at construction costs. And I want to warn you that there's a couple different ways to look at costs. We're going to be comparing construction costs, and then we'll come back in and add all the other project costs to that. They aren't the same. That construction cost was about $21 million. The second choice was to try to do something down on the Diamond site next to the courthouse. And that was plagued by two problems. One was solving the parking dilemma, which is a real problem in Meadville. And the second problem was that it cost about $10 million more to house the same number of departments. But it did keep the activities closer together. It was more in line with the goal of consolidating the operations of the county, and it kept all those operations essentially in downtown Meadville, which, you know, as any planner will tell you, is how you strengthen your communities as opposed to pulling the pieces and pulling them apart. The least cost argument won out finally, and the recommendation from the Citizen Advisory Committee to the commissioners, not unanimous, but the recommendation that was passed on was to proceed with moving the judicial center to the Talent site. But we started working on that project in terms of doing the design and the engineering. We were getting fairly close to, and we actually started doing some of the construction work too. There were things up there that needed to be done before anything could be done with that site. There was a portion of the building that had to be demolished. It was not usable. There was some asbestos and other hazardous materials that had to be abated. We wanted to separate out the utilities because we could see the property getting separated in the future. All of those things added value to the site and were in preparation of what we thought was going to be the solution. But as we got closer and closer to bidding it, the commissioners simply could not, and this, now we're working with the new board, by the way, they could not get comfortable with the idea of moving the judicial center up on the hill. And so we have weekly meetings with them, and after one of the meetings, we were asked to go back, get out some fresh paper, and show them what we could design for the same amount of money in terms of a campus or an addition down on the Diamond Center. And that's what we're looking at right now. Basically, the project as it's proposed, this is the existing courthouse. Backing here's the old sheriff's house and jail. We're proposing those come down and an addition be put on the courthouse so that the courthouse will accommodate all of the court-related activities. The main reason we decided to do that was because we wouldn't have to change the name of the building, which is Crawford County Courthouse. But it worked pretty well. It took some compromise on the part of the judges and all these departments because their spaces kind of got squeezed a little bit. But we did get all the court-related functions into the courthouse, leaving the administrative functions to go into a new standalone building on the site. And we've looked at a number of configurations and a number of orientations. They all work out to be about the same. This project has a estimated construction cost that's almost exactly identical to the Talon project. It's about $21 million. Now, we have got to go from construction cost to project cost. We're suggesting to the commissioners that they budget $30 million for the entire project. Because in addition to the construction costs, they have to pay the greedy architects, they have to pay all the costs of financing the project, they have to provide IT for the project, they have to provide some level of furnishings and equipment for the project. They have temporary interest, all those sorts of things. And because one of the goals in the project is to provide off-street parking for all the courthouse employees and all the fleet vehicles, there's going to be some property acquisition involved and some parking lot construction involved. So those costs get put on top of the construction cost. And then because it's an old building, and there are always situations where you get into older buildings and you say, oh my gosh, we've recommended they carry a $2 million contingency. So all of those things wrapped together give you about a $30 million total project cost. The parking is it's been a huge issue. It was something that we had to deal with from a zoning point of view, and we also had to deal with it from a practical function point of view. Right now, there are lots of this is the courthouse, you know the Diamond here, there's parking all around the Diamond. You'll notice that most mornings, the parking on the streets and the parking around the Diamond fills up before the courthouse even opens, because those are courthouse employees basically running out every 2 hours and feeding the machines with quarters. Not particularly efficient way to try to operate a county government either. So our solution to the county problem, the parking problem, was to provide some surface parking lots on property that the commissioners already own or would acquire or would lease from private entities. And basically there are 229 parking spaces, which takes care of all the courthouse employees and all of the fleet vehicles, all the staff vehicles, off-street. Now nobody has said that this is free parking to the employees. That's yet to be decided, but it's off-street parking, which opens the street parking and the parking around Diamond Park back up to users of the courthouse and the general public. So that's been a component of the cost as well. The solution has, as I said, all the court-related functions in the courthouse. There's a couple of them that change pretty significantly. Right now, there is no secure holding area for prisoners coming for court hearings. They basically come in, they go down an alley, they go through an old tunnel. It's a scary place, actually, through the jail, and there's a tiny little holding center that's pretty grim. And then they're brought up to the courthouse through the same corridors and elevators that the public uses. So you have defense attorneys, prosecuting attorneys, witnesses, visitors, potential jurors, and defendants all potentially mixing in the same set of corridors. That's not good practice. That leads to mistrials and all sorts of problems. So one of the major goals was to create a secure circulation so that the judges and the defendants would remain separate from all the rest of the public, and that there was also a secure way to get the folks that are on the juries to the jury deliberation rooms, which is another whole story that needed some pretty heavy attention. Another aspect of the courts is that we all know that we're in an increasingly litigious society. There are more and more court cases. The judges believe that in the not terribly distant future, we're going to require 4 courtrooms in Meadville. Right now, we're getting by with 3 and a little meeting room upstairs that serves as juvenile masters. It's really not appropriate either. So we've designed a juvenile masters area that can be converted into a courtroom in the future. I said all the remaining areas that are associated with the court system are included in this building. And this addition, which goes out here, even though it's only going to be a 2-story addition, basement and 2-story addition, is going to be designed to take another story sometime in the future. So that's the potential someday down the road built-in expansion for the court system. The administrative functions embody the day-to-day operations of the county, and those were organized primarily so that those activities such as the Register of Wills and the Assessment Office and the Treasurer are located near the front door at grade, easily accessible to the public. And then above them on the next floor up are the Commissioners, Maintenance, the Voter Services, and Human Resources departments. And then all the way up on the top floor are the IT, the auditors, planning, and some archive storage. There's a tremendous amount of archive storage that's required, and it's required by law to be paper storage. You can do whatever electronic copying you want of these files, but you have to maintain the paper files for years and years and years and years. And until that changes, we have to have a way to store that is centralized, as opposed to every department having all of their aisles cluttered with boxes 4 high, the length of the aisle, for storage. So those are the general uses of the facilities. But when you started out, and I can give you just a couple of quick totals, and if anybody's interested in specifics, we have those too. But the county, and these are net square feet, these are not gross square feet, so these are the actual spaces that people use. The county now uses about 58,000 square feet. When we programmed everything that the county believed was appropriate for the future, the total was 97,000 square feet. And the plan as it currently exists right now is 79,000 square feet. So everybody has compromised. You know, we're getting to the point where almost everybody is equally unhappy in terms of the space that's planned into this. And that's how we are where we are in terms of the budget. The general plan, aesthetics. There are a couple of renderings over here that show the intention. I mean, basically what we're trying to do is, this is a historical district. We're trying to maintain essentially the flavor of the district. We're designing the addition to look like the courthouse, using the same palette of materials, same form, same types of windows, that sort of thing. There are 2 views of it here because we're currently looking at 2 different orientations on the site, one of which has the building parallel to Diamond Park, as shown here, and one of which, and it goes from this current John Holt Way all the way over to Walnut Street, requires a demolition of a historic house right here. The other option is takes this, turns it 90 degrees, leaves the historic house in place, but requires taking more property up on this neck of the woods. And finally, that is a function of the land acquisition process, and it's a judgment that the commissioners have yet to make. The general logistics are to start in here, do the addition and the renovations to the courthouse. I'm sorry, scratch that. Start and build the new space first. Move the existing components of the judicial system into the administrative center. Remember, there still are a bunch of the judicial departments that are off-site. Come back in and renovate this space, kind of moving people around while the administrative staff are in place. I guess the perception is that these guys are more tolerant than the judges are to noise and dust and disruption. And then when the judicial center is finished, move all the courts back into the courthouse and move the administration over to their new home. We see this being about 3 years in total duration, and probably done in 3 major phases. Let's see. Financing. We're on the cusp of having a financial plan prepared for the county by their financial advisors and bond counsel. We know that we have a total project cost of about $30 million. The county has some cash that diminishes the amount they have to borrow. The county has some assets that they can liquidate that will diminish some of the cost of borrowing. When we get all done with that, we'll have an amount that we know is probably going to be funded with a bond issue. The annual debt service, some of the annual debt service can be paid for by operational savings from having a more efficient center. Some of the annual debt service can be paid for because we're going to eliminate rental that the county is paying for the other facilities that they're currently occupying. And what's going to be left is going to be the amount that's going to have to be covered within a combination of the existing budget and perhaps some new millage. I don't believe that it can be done without any millage increase, but it's not going to be anywhere near the entire project that's going to have to be funded out of additional millage. And what the commissioners are hoping to do is gather another set of input, make some final decisions on how they want to go, tie down all the costs, and then come back with the best plan for the county in terms of being able to afford it. So that's all I know. I spent 4 years learning that much. If you have any questions, I guess, Mark, you're going to deal with them, and I'll let the commissioners direct them to whoever makes most sense.
Okay.
I can't answer any questions about the healthcare system, so don't ask them.
Bruce Keys. Where's Bruce? There's Bruce. Bruce has a couple of questions, and I'll try and paraphrase Bruce if you want to fill in the blanks. But I guess you're asking if the commissioners considered the cost of renting and compared that to the cost of building.
Yeah, 30 million, you could do a lot of rent.
Right.
Good point.
That's, yeah.
I know you have some others, and I'm just gonna, that's the question.
Well, with renting, obviously you're spreading the county offices around Meadville.
I'm talking about everything you want to consolidate. What you're paying on rent now compared to the 30 million. All right, you leave things the way they are. How long did that 30 million pay rent?
Let me take a swing at that.
Yeah, I get it.
Again, we're probably going to end up being able to credit some of the rent that's already being paid against the cost of debt service. The remaining debt service would probably get phased in and would get phased out, and at the end of 25 years, the building would be paid off, and there would be no more.
You're not answering my question. Maybe
Okay.
I'm not playing. How much are you paying now for rent? Compared in 30 years, for that 25 million, for 30 years, 30 million for the 25 years, how much are you paying for rent now? What's your total payment for rent, that you are gonna take from the rent and put towards the 30 million? You understand what I'm saying? Is that more plain, more concise? I'm trying to figure out how much you're paying for rent right now.
It's a couple $100,000
It is.
if you leave in place the,
You say don't change anything. You stay the way you are, and you just keep renting. So a couple $100,000 a year, or a couple $100,000 a month?
couple $100,000 a year in rent. But, and again, I'm gonna ask you to keep that question until they get the financial analysis, and I know they'll make that available.
Right, but I just wanna know how much they're paying in rent now, so we have a little bit of a comparison.
If,
Dick, it's a hybrid. In other words, I think your question is, what if you took is your question if you took all this space and just rented from somebody or somebody's, what would be the outcome? Is that the question, really?
Well, what I'm saying is, how much are you paying now for rent, the places that you will be vacating once you own? So I'm trying to find out the difference, say, in the 25 years, if you're paying $200,000 a year now, that'd take a long time to make $30 million.
It would, and I guess the way to look at that is this. One of the things that's true, we do have our human services and the extension offices under lease with our IDC, which is the group that runs the AFTEX. And typically, if you have rental property, right, I mean, if you take a look, what would you be paying if you were renting everything out off of other people? There's several things that come into play. Number one, over the term of 25 years, you don't have control of the rent. That's something that needs to be considered. In other words, if it's based on a CPI or something like that, it's going to keep escalating. One of the things that you'd be doing here is you have a fixed cost with a known quantity. And you also don't have control over several other factors. You have control, but the cost would be a lot higher if you had IT in all these places and you were moving as things went. One of the things that we're trying to do is consolidate and cost contain through this. That's kind of what's driving this. We rent out space for human services, we rent out space for our veterans office, for the extension office. Those things will probably stay, and maybe some other things will move into like that down the line. But currently, with multiple physical plant, multiple rentals, multiple insurance policies that cover all of these different things, not to mention preventative maintenance or anything else that would feed into that, these costs that we're paying now are exorbitant, and we haven't invested in them in a very long time. So one of the things we're trying to do here when it comes to finances is put all that together, reasonably see what you're paying, what you can afford, and how you can contain the costs. I don't know if that's helping you, but
To some degree, but.
somebody said, let me just say one other thing, Dick, why don't you rent everything out, across town, which is a vision of some people. And the only thing I can say that makes any sense is you don't see school districts renting out space for different grades for a reason. You typically don't see hospitals putting oncology over here in different places for a reason. It becomes unmanageable. Either you own a facility where everything's in there, where you have those cost containments and some parking, right? Or you don't. And there's obviously doctors that have offices elsewhere. That's not the point. There's a reason why you wouldn't do that, and one of the reasons is you lose control over costs over time. It's an undeniable sidebar to renting. And the other thing is the management capacity. A lot of the interaction that goes on between offices, between department heads and the commissioners and the courts and the whomever, all of that activity, the human activity, interaction between individuals would be a nightmare, trying to get from here to there in the park, especially in the winter. So I hope that helps.
Well, that last part, I don't agree with at all. There's corporate offices in one city, and then there'll be sub-corporate offices in other cities. You can video conference, you could, email. I don't, that last part, I don't, should be anything a consideration. and maybe that, I'm being too blunt with that, but that shouldn't even be any kind of consideration. Because in today's technology, that's, you know, you could talk, he could be down in Florida and do something, you know, and you guys could still do it. But again, I don't wanna take anybody else's time, but my main concern was the cost of renting and owning.
Jack, you're currently spending about $527,000 a year rent and utilities. Now, not all of that would be eliminated.
Right.
Bruce, I'm gonna address your follow-up question. I think that's what it is here. You want me to do that one?
Yes, please.
The question, Bruce, the second question is, have you considered a simpler building? And I'm guessing that you're meaning.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a zoning and historical, it can be compromised. Every city in America does it. I think that I don't know if you've looked at a simpler, plain, or just a functional building that doesn't necessarily stand out, but it doesn't have to match the historical thing. I don't know anything against historical, but you're using our taxpayer dollars that, and I don't know that making it historical looking makes it any more functional. And in this area, I mean, you can name cases where they've got the historical zoning, whatever you want to call it, they changed their mind, they went along with it. I mean, downtown Franklin, there's buildings that are in historical places that aren't even look historical. And then again, I'm not trying to belabor the point, I'm just saying, it seems, have you considered a simpler, a functional building, I guess is what I'm saying, a more functional building that doesn't have to necessarily be matched to everything with the courts. And in fact, if you have it, why wouldn't you?
Take a run at that? We're not paying a huge premium for the aesthetics. That's in terms of building a public building that you expect to last for 50 years. You're probably going to be working with the same materials anyway. So basically what we're talking about here is applying a palette that's, you know, sympathetic to the courthouse next door.
So what you're saying is the cosmetics isn't gonna jack up the price like $3 million or $4 million?
No, we're not paying a huge premium
Okay.
for aesthetics.
All right.
What we are doing though, is we're designing a building that would meet the lead criteria for being an efficient building, easy to maintain, easy to operate, inexpensive to operate. And part of the money that will be contributed toward paying the debt service will come from savings, energy savings and other savings in the existing buildings. It won't be a huge amount of it, but it'll be some of it, and that's how you make up that financial pro forma.
Are you far enough along to maybe have an idea on being more efficient for heating and cooling?
We
Yeah,
think
or
there's
no?
about $300,000 a year in savings, but that still needs to be tested. We're not, this project is about 30% design at this point.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, the next one doesn't have a name on it. Who asked a question about the Talon building? Okay, ma'am. The question is what will the county do with the Talon building? And then you can amplify that once you get your answer.
We are looking at possibility of selling the town building since we're not using it if we fall through with this plan. And we have asked for estimates on probably what we would do, because we don't have any interest that we know of anybody in the building as it is, and that's understandable, is to tear it down, and there's two ways to do that. Maybe we tore down building C, but the majority of it was hauled off, and very little buried on site. And the other option is to bury on site where you take that building down, and that would have to be like a parking lot, so you wouldn't be able to build on that site, and just haul off the excess. And I don't know, Dick, if you want to elaborate on that anymore?
Well, the entire area up there is zoned residential, and it is residential in character. The building has been around for quite a while, and nobody has stepped up with any intention of trying to do an adaptive reuse of the building. That's not to say it couldn't happen. Our analysis of it was that it was, about half of the cost of building new, but that was for a use that could be accommodated in a residential district. Now you take away a courthouse or a public building, which is the only thing that can happen in that residential district. And there aren't very many choices left, and there aren't very many people who want to undertake a project that's nearly, 260,000 square feet. So what has been done to date is that there's an existing building that serves as offices that has been separated. All the utilities have been separated. It's been subdivided. It can be parceled off and sold as an income property. The remaining property, which is a fairly nice chunk of property, would be pretty attractive if you remove the Talon building for residential development, whether it was single family or multifamily. And it would probably be a lot more in character with the neighborhood. So those are the options.
So, well, I guess then the money that you spent for that building is just wasted then? We're not gonna use
Not
it?
entirely, because you could not have sold the property without taking care of the hazardous materials, which is where the bulk of the money was spent. And the project probably has a higher and greater value with partial or complete demolition. There's a cost attached to that. So those are the two biggest chunks of money that's been spent up there. I think that that would have had to have been done in any eventuality. The other thing that they spent money for was having us design a judicial center up there. And what we were able to do is take a big chunk of that design and that programming and transfer it directly down to here. So they will end up spending significantly less than they would have on this site. So there probably will be some money that doesn't see a direct return, but I don't think it's wasted.
I guess I'm wondering why everybody got moved out of that building, before you even had a plan for the building. Why didn't you just let all those businesses in there instead of having that all go? I think
And the answer is because the redevelopment authority couldn't make that building break even with the tenants that were in there, and there's no way the county could put themselves in a position of being a landlord in a underperforming building. So, and at that time, it was a real option for the county. It's just one they chose not to go any further with. But they would have been, I think, in a deeper mess if they had kept the people in there and now wanted to sell the building, complete with all of the deficiencies. So, might not have been the planned route, but it worked out okay, I think.
Ma'am, I think this is your question.
about the courtrooms.
Yes. I know
But
that.
I guess you're not. From what I've read, I thought you were building new courtrooms, but I guess you're not building new courtrooms.
Well, part of the courts are in the addition, and part of the courts are in the existing courthouse. We're certainly renovating that floor to a like-new condition. One of the things that exists with this current courthouse, it was last renovated in 1956. And frankly, it hasn't been touched in any significant way since then. You have single glazed windows that birds can fly through. The roof, up until last year, leaked like a sieve. The mechanical systems are shot, the electrical systems are shot, the IT systems are difficult, if not shot.
They're not shot.
They're not shot, but they're difficult. And the old lady needs some work. Even if you did nothing else, you would easily spend $10, $12 million simply upgrading that building to meet current handicap accessibility codes, current building codes, and provide an environment that you could air condition with something other than window air conditioners, and provide a reasonable standard of health in terms of air exchanges and finishes and all that kind of thing. So, again, we get back to that. There is not a do-nothing option. In any case, county is going to be looking at spending half of the money that they're going to spend on this project just to put the courthouse back into a code-compliant and healthy state.
So you're talking about the whole courthouse. I guess I was my confusion was just about the courtrooms, like the rooms.
Well, if you wanna come up and look at these later, the third floor is essentially the courtrooms. And the
So they're
courtrooms,
staying where they are, just being.
well, they're being moved around a little bit, they're being enlarged because they're not handicapped accessible. We don't have secure access for the judges. You know, they've been reconfigured, but they're staying on that same floor. In fact, this is courtroom 1 right here.
Okay, that was my question. From what I read, I thought you were building new courtrooms somewhere, so that
Yeah.
was.
And that goes back to the Citizen Advisory Committee, who correctly analyzed that building new courthouse space is close to $300 a square foot, and we could renovate this for less than half of that cost. So the biggest chunk of the spaces, which are courthouse related, are in renovation.
All right, I'm gonna go to you, Susan.
Thank you.
We have some folks here from Meadville from the historical, and Susan has asked to, to address the folks relevant to the tar mansion. And I don't know if you wanna do it, or Josh, you wanna jump in there, supporting flyer for each?
Any questions, or
I have a question.
just wanted to sort of,
I think what you're intending is important. You might need, you're welcome to stand up and say it, to these folks here.
Sure.
kind of borrow you one?
I've quickly learned that
Practice this last
when you come to a meeting, it's best to have a tall person. So the Tar Mansion, for those of you who may not be familiar with it, and we have pictures of the exterior as well, is on Diamond Park. It was built in 1866 and 1867 by James and Elizabeth Tarr, who were from this neck of the woods. They sold their farm in this region for $2 million then, which is close to the $35–36 million range today, and built in Crawford County for $30,000 then, which is about almost $500,000 today. That house is standing in structurally sound shape. It needs some work, just like the courthouse. The old girl needs a little TLC. But I've got some photographs both that he'll hold up and then we'll pass around as well. We have bohemian glass in some of the bay windows.
Beautiful place.
It's gorgeous.
It is. Here are some of the fireplaces. There are approximately 11 fireplaces intact in the building, some of which are in black walnut, some are in marble. There's marble. Let's see, some of these are the duplicates to pass around. Or a large amount of the black walnut woodwork is intact. Here's one of the staircases. The building is a double house. The left side, where's the front view here? There is sort of a front view here. The left side and the right side each have a staircase. One side was for the family, the second side was for a stepdaughter. So anyway, regardless of, I'll pass these around. The Historical Society, with the concern that the building may be demolished to expand the courthouse. I've met with the commissioner several times. We've looked at options. We are looking presently, talking to the Sternbys. We are the current owners of the property. We're talking to the community, and we're looking at potential idea of seeing if there can be enough community support to, in some way, shape, or form, acquire and keep the building, both partially on the tax rolls and historically, as I said, historically on the diamond. That said, those two things can only happen, or those things can only happen if the building, when we get meeting with the current owners, can be negotiated over both a fair price and to look and see what kind of construction costs would be involved to repair the building, and also if the community is in support, both in spirit and financially, of doing so. So the Historical Society is actively involved, and the Commissioner's been very willing to listen to us and very willing to offer some both support and an ear to try to both save the building, which is not just a Crawford County landmark, but also an oil region landmark, and make sure it sees another 150 years.
Right behind you is an alternate site plan that would allow it to remain and still allow the courthouse functions to be constructed.
This is the tar mansion over
Yeah.
here.
So commissioners are looking at that, and they'll make a decision which is the best direction for the county.
I guess, maybe I wasn't paying close attention, what makes it historical? What's the, you know what I'm saying, what is the, I'm not trying to make it light of it, but what is, because I'm from Titusville, I don't even know what you're talking about. What makes it so,
Bruce, hold on.
oh, I'm
I would
sorry.
like to speak to him about that. My name is Susan Weaver Arthur, and I was born and raised in Titusville. And as such, I know that this is the birthplace of the oil industry. The Tar Mansion was built with oil money. James and Elizabeth Tar came from Titusville. I knew some of their descendants when I was growing up and going to school in Titusville. And so it was part of the history of the oil industry. They were dirt farmers. Oil was struck on the farm, and they came to the big city of Meadville and built the mansion. So it is historically significant to the oil region. And it is a very significant architectural building. And if you would like to see it, then I invite you to come to the dining and see it. I have an office there, and I've been there for 14 years. And I will gladly show you my space there. There are 3 levels where people live in this building. This is not an empty building. This is a building that is a living, thriving building. I myself am a licensed and certified massage therapist, and I have been there for 14 years. I have another person who does reflexology. I have another person who does medicinal herbal remedies. We do good work. We do healing work. There are people that live on all 3 floors, including a woman on the 1st floor who doesn't even know if her health will allow her to move again. She and her husband and daughter recently moved into the Tar Mansion about a year ago. So there are people there, as I said last night, and forgive me, gentlemen, if I repeat myself, but this is something you need to think about. These are people, this is their home. They live there, they love there, they laugh there, they cry there, they sleep there, they make love there. This is their home. And it's a historical, significant building. It should be reserved for Crawford County.
What year was it built?
1867.
I don't know.
It is technically a contributing structure to a historic district.
Absolutely.
It is contributing, because it's in the historic district, it's listed as a contributing structure rather than being listed individually on the National Register of Historic Places. It's between 12 and 15,000 square feet. It has approximately 10 apartments in it at the moment. As I said, the Historical Society's been working with the commissioners in an effort to try to find a resolution. As you see over there in the far left, there is a drawing with the Tar Mansion on the far left, sort of hidden by a tree. And then behind me, proposed turning of the building as one of the possible options. And that said, if I'm still under the correct understanding, Vic, when we talked, the costs of turning the building 90 degrees compared to having it with parallel with Denny Park are approximately the same, give or take a little bit of property acquisition.
Yeah, there's no significant difference. Perhaps the only significant difference is that the Tar Mansion and the adjoining property have been for sale, as opposed to the properties that would have to replace it, which are not for sale. So that's why the commissioners started the way they did.
Okay, then you bring up another problem maybe. If the people don't want to sell, if you keep this a historic building, which, you know, I'm not either for or against right now, but the other people refuse to sell, okay, for whatever reason, then would you be using intimate domain to take that other property?
I think
That's not for sale.
That's an option if it can't be negotiated.
So you would take a property
I
that's for
I didn't say they would. I said it's an option if it can't be negotiated.
So a property that's for sale, you wouldn't take, but you would force someone to sell their property. I mean, I'm saying that's hypothetical right now, but that could happen.
That is one of the options that could happen.
Okay.
Well, to be clear, that building's been for sale through the Sternby family for a decade or longer. And, you know, it would, at that point, be, I think, a process of negotiation. I mean, it's not like it's off the market. In fact, it's been on the market. There's been a sign there for years. I think what Josh is speaking to is, his group is looking for a consortium to take a look at and to do that on a private side.
Right, I understand.
So, I mean, I think that's where it's going. So, I mean, to say that if nothing happens, we're gonna have that domain.
Because I see you had animal domain over there in Meadville anyways recently, so I was wondering if you decide to go with the other acquisitions and leave that stand, that's what I was wondering. Because that is a possibility.
Just put the commissioner's office in there.
Well, no, I wanted to ask them, has there been any
Hold on.
study about
Hey,
using
folks,
that building?
hold on, ma'am, go ahead.
Oh,
Go ahead.
I was wondering if anybody ever looked into using the tar mansion instead of building that new building? Could it be used for the offices?
What is the square foot of the building?
Oh, it's about 4 or 5 times what the
Tar mansion.
tar mansion is, and
So it's
And
not.
I guess I would tell you that we were hired to try to provide a functional and efficient space for the county. And whatever your feelings are about restoring historical properties, the end result would be neither of those as far as the county operating. That's not saying that they're going to tear it down for spite, but I would not recommend the county consider renovating that and using it as a county facility.
All right, I'm gonna move on to Dwight. Where's Dwight? There's Dwight.
Can we sit down or is this?
Yeah, you can sit down, Josh. Thank you. Dwight, I'm not sure, Dwight's first question is, you have plans to improve social services delivery. Is that relative to this?
Sure.
In what way?
Well, if it were streamlined, perhaps you'd have less employees and need less office space. Are we duplicating services
Social services?
through our social services that, because there's some specific labeling of how they're delivered, one agency can't do this, could we streamline service to our clients or our people in the community? I don't know, what's your social service budget in Crawford County? Big chunk of change, put it that way. A big percentage of your budget is social services, correct? We need people to provide those services. We need technology to provide those services. Do we need all of it? And have we considered that as part of the long-range plan of the county, that we would be streamlining these services in the future? That's the reason I ask it, because then perhaps we wouldn't need that many square feet.
All right, Dwight, your
It's
second.
off tangent, I understand that, but I think it's all part of it.
Well, and Dwight, one of the things that the Citizen Advisory Committee came back and recommended was that the human services departments, which I think you're referring to, stay in their leased space because they're largely funded by third-party payers. And if there's any reduction, it's very easy to reduce the rental that's being paid on that space. So the short form answer to your question is that the Human Services Department are not housed in this project.
Oh, then they won't be, there's no,
And they
that's
won't
not the
be.
plan.
No.
Okay, I didn't catch that. I wrote the question before, I
Okay.
heard her speech. The other question was, and I want to touch on one, so you had mentioned we have assets that could be liquidated. What were you
That was
referring
your
to?
third question. I got your second one here.
Oh, well, there's another one as well.
Go ahead.
I'm inquisitive, okay?
The county owns a couple of the facilities that they currently use in Meadville. Those buildings would be abandoned, they could be resold.
It's not just the talent.
And the talent is
That's
the
part
other
of
one,
it.
yeah, that's a part of it.
And what, is that $30 million?
I wish.
Is it
You
$12
wish.
million?
Huh?
Do you think it's $12 million?
No. No, if the buildings were worth anywhere near that much, then we'd be looking at renovating them. But it could reduce the amount of indebtedness.
Okay, yes, it could.
And we're gonna try to put a number on that, but that takes somebody
I thought maybe there
with
was
a
some
different set of initials
gold,
after
pot of
that.
gold that we were gonna liquidate, and
No,
we really wouldn't have to, it'd be 30 years to pay it off or something, or the payment would be, minuscule. I'm a dreamer as well.
that's fair.
Dwight, your second question, did that get answered by Bruce's question about other options for county office?
Yeah, I think it did,
Okay.
yeah. And just the discussion from Dick's historic background on this.
I'm up to Jim's question here. I love this one.
Good one.
a good one, Jim. Can you complain about, how can you complain about metered parking if you are going to meter employee parking?
Yeah, it's a great one. How can you complain about that? And you're open, you complain about the worker going out and putting quarters in the meter every 2 hours, but if you put meters in the employee parking, they're gonna have to go out and put quarters in the meter every 2 hours.
Well, I think there's lots of solutions to dedicated parking
Should be,
spaces.
should be free parking like the commissioners get.
That's an option.
Yeah.
It just costs tax money, that's
Sure.
all.
Or you could talk to the city and get them to put 8-hour meters out front.
Or-
And they wouldn't water it.
Or you could have a monthly parking permit in the employee
That would work
parking
too.
areas.
Employee ID sliders,
Yeah.
I'm sure there's technology for that.
So I don't think that we know exactly what's gonna happen. Ideally, it would open up the parking around, the courthouse for people who come in and use it for an hour or 2 hours at a time.
Most other counties, you have to pay for parking. I'm just saying,
I-
how could you complain about it if you're still gonna do it?
It's more the fact that it takes all of the available parking, and it's a very inefficient way to manage it.
You could thank the city for taking all the parking, because you used to be able to park around there no problem, until the city moved there.
And
No
city-
doubt.
Now,
And
you can't get a place.
Oh, I see, okay.
Jim's second question is, and this may have been answered, sort of, how is the old courthouse, and you can expand on this, Jim, how's the old courthouse gonna be more efficient with a new addition?
Yeah, you said it was gonna be more efficient to build a new building, but you still have the old courthouse there. Now, how the hell are you gonna make the old courthouse more efficient?
Well,
It's still gonna have the same heating, still gonna have the
No.
same tall ceilings?
no, actually it's not.
Well, if you put a new heating system in it, with a new addition, why can't you put a new heating system in it in the old courthouse?
That's a
Because you're
great
still
idea.
gonna have the same structure.
That's a great idea, that's what we plan to do.
Yeah, we said that.
Is totally replacing mechanical systems from the ground up.
But you can do that without putting an addition on, is what my
Yes, but
opinion
then you
is.
wouldn't have room for the courthouses.
Have
and
you been
you
to
wouldn't-
other counties? It's a big courthouse, Crawford County is. There's lots of open space. It is, it's big. Every office is big. Commissioners, quarters, pros, upstairs, downstairs, wherever you go.
Yeah,
It's not
actually they're not. If you look at the employees who are there and compare it against any reasonable standard, and look at some of the spaces you don't go into frequently.
Have you been to other counties?
Yeah.
Have you been to Forest County? Forest County is a small county, but there are 3 offices in one office in Forest County. And you have a bank vault you have to walk into to pull your books. You don't have that in Crawford County. Of course, Crawford County is bigger, but it's a big building. What is the comparable square foot to a comparable populated county comparable to Crawford?
I've not looked at that. I could probably try to find that for you. What I can tell you is that when we originally did this space programming, and we looked at standards which are developed, by a broad sector of these facilities, what we came up with was 97,000 square feet, and what we're ending up with is 79,000 square feet. So it's less than would be a standard.
But we've had 56,000 square feet for how long?
Too long.
A long time. When was the courthouse built?
It was renovated in 1956.
Okay.
And a lot of the departments that should be there are not in there now. So when you bring them back, there's just no way to fit 10 pounds in a 5-pound bag. It just won't fit.
Just gotta stuff it.
I got a couple of written questions left, and I asked Mr. Alexitos if he wanted to write a question, but he said he'd prefer to just, stand up and talk, so I'll give him that opportunity.
My name is Dennis Alexitos, I'm from Meadville, Pennsylvania. You've listened to this facade. You should have been at the meeting in Meadville when we had 100 people there, all protesting this, and want to put it on a ballot, on a referendum. They won't do it. This is a done deal. Mind you, what I'm telling you right now, this is a done deal. It'll be put down with their committee members who will vote it in and say, oh, that's okay, and with this gentleman here, Mr. Fox. They'll all vote that in, and you'll pay the price of this because your representative, Brad Rowe, come up with the figures at that meeting, will be $46 million before it's finished with the interest rates. Now, take my word for it. They spent $4 million on the Talon building. They didn't spend it, they squandered it. They squandered it. And now they gotta get rid of it. Somehow, they gotta get rid of it. They haven't come up with a way to get rid of it yet. They've got a few more weeks, or a few more months to do that in. Because John Sott, the mayor, gave them 180 days, which was a few months ago. So they gotta come up with some way to get rid of that monster up there. But they squandered $4 million of your money, your tax money. Not only that, the bridge over there, $15 million bridge. Acro Bridge Company, right here in my hand, wants to put this bridge in for $1 million, and they won't listen to him. He's given 3 minutes of his time, and they wouldn't even discuss anything with this gentleman, come up from Philadelphia. Wouldn't even discuss it. This is the commissioners you've got working for you. $1 million bridge could be put in 2 weeks. 2 weeks, mind you. Doesn't touch the water. They just crane it over. They want to spend $15 million of your tax money yet. And they keep pushing this thing that way. I've been fighting them, but they've taken my buildings. You say they don't have eminent domain? This gentleman just mentioned it over here. They've taken my buildings. They padlocked me out. These are the commissioners you're looking at. They've already got this cut and dried. It's going to go down in September, believe me. And you're going to be paying for this. All of it. They have plenty of room downtown to put all of their stuff. There's vacant spaces down there. You can put all their people down there that they want to put in. No. And they could buy, they could rent that for really reasonable rates because they're vacant. They've been vacant for years. They would gladly rent that and at least get somebody to pay the taxes on those buildings downtown. Mind you, the only thing you've got left is your vote. Mind you, when it comes time to vote, you've got to kick these three out. Mind you, I'm telling you, it's going to go down. But mind you, they won't put it on a referendum because it won't fly. And they don't want me to speak to you because I'm telling you the truth, what's taking place in Mayville. If you was there at that meeting, 100% of the people told them they don't want this building. But here they are up here talking to you to put it down. They're going to put it in, but excuse me. Thank you for your time, ladies. I'm sorry we don't have a bigger crowd here, but I'm being put out. If he says talk about eminent domain, they take this building quicker than a scat if they get their hands on it. That's these kind of commissioners you've got.
Thanks, Mr. Lexington.
Thank you, thank you.
Now, Bill, where's Bill? Bill Moore. That's you. Bill, you're like doctor's handwriting.
I had a real
Go
quick
ahead.
question.
Go ahead.
In the middle of the back of the basement is just crawl space with a corridor around it. Could that not be excavated and used for storage since we're looking for storage?
But this space here,
Yes, which would be
this is
habitable.
currently not constructed. And the only part of the addition that we're putting a full story underground is for the sheriff's sally port and holding cells.
Well, what, that's the jail yard of the old jail, right?
Yeah.
Now, that does go down to grade, doesn't it?
There are portions of it that are below grade, but
All right, well, my question is, why not take it all down to the low level and use it for storeroom rather than leave it half full and just waste it as crawl space?
process of design, basically, it was the court rooms and the court facilities that set the footprint for the building. And from there on, we used existing space, and we didn't build any new space that we didn't need. That would be new space that we don't need.
All right, it's just.
That's the answer.
It's
That's
just
just-
that the court is the one that's contributing to the paper, you know,
Yeah.
tornado over there, and if you they actually put some of their papers right down in their own basement, I think that would be appropriate.
Well, as a matter of fact, the court archives are in the center of the existing basement.
Okay, well.
In space that currently
I was
exists.
just gonna send them out the rest of the way by DVD. Okay, thank you.
Well, you know, you can have two-level basements too.
Yeah.
You don't have to just have one. You can dig down and make more space.
Yeah. We just don't need that more space.
You might need it, though. Better look ahead.
Well, then you don't need to go to the tar house.
Folks, that's all of the written questions I have.
Just, could I ask one more quick one?
I'm gonna ask this lady, before I can ask her. Go
Hi.
ahead, ma'am.
I didn't turn into question, because I don't have a question, I'd like
You won't call
to
the
make a
cops.
comment. Greetings, many of you know me, my name's Marilyn Black, I work for the Oil Region Alliance, and my particular job is administering the Oil Region National Heritage Area. We have provided the commissioners with a letter prior to today, but I would like just to summarize a few key sentences from that. The topic is the tar house, the tar mansion. And that is that we respectfully encourage that the tar mansion not be demolished by the County of Crawford or any other party in connection with the expansion of the courthouse building, associated parking, and or administrative building. Specifically, it's unnecessary, unwise, and inappropriate to demolish this viable, historically significant tar mansion, which is well-maintained, privately owned, occupied, and a highly visible cultural asset to both Meadville and the County of Crawford. This building was constructed for members of two key oil families, both the Tar family and the McClintock family, which they intermarrying there, whose early days were along Oil Creek in what is now the Oil Region National Heritage Area. And normally we do not comment on projects outside of the footprint of the National Heritage Area, but because other parts of Crawford County are within our territory, and I live in Crawford County, and because of the oil families, we just feel very strong and are willing to provide additional technical assistance to the various organizations that will help to make sure that the tar mansion not only remains in place, but it remains a very viable part of the whole Diamond Park, which is really the heart of Meadville, and is really its diamond, and that this is, the tar mansion is one of the gems that need to stay.
Thank you.
Bruce?
I'll make sure this is my last one. Have they thought of, and I don't understand why, if they have, and why they couldn't do it. You know, there's no reason why they has to be only open from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Most businesses run, you know, they can run till midnight. Why can't you, because they said there's no room, well, George and Sam work the first shift, and then the other people work second shift, they can use the same space, they might have to have a different computer. Has that been taken into, has that even been a thought of running, keep the courthouse open longer? You follow my...
I'll jump in here. I'm still fairly new over there, but I have learned, and not in a good way, to not get sideways with the courts or any of the court-related offices, because they're all their own separate.
They work for us, though. We pay their...
I understand that.
If they don't like it, they can leave.
That would be, you know.
I mean, I'm not trying to be rude, I'm just...
I understand, but that, and, you know, I can tell you that I completely understand where you're coming from.
So you're saying these guys would be fighting with the judges and stuff?
Yeah, that does not work, I can tell you that.
So actually, the judges have more power than they... I mean, maybe you can't say that. The judges have more power than the people pay their salaries?
The courts are a separate branch of government, you know, they are separate but equal. When it comes to their operations, they have specific legal, you know.
So nowhere in America they have judges work at night. Is that what you're saying?
Bruce.
No, I'm just asking.
I can't answer that question. I'm
Okay.
sure that there are.
So then they could if we really forced them to.
I think that would have to be a question that your county commissioners, I'm sure, could carry for you, but I'm not sure that.
They want to take the fight, because it might be a big one.
Yeah, we tend to, I mean, this is the courthouse. court requirements have driven a lot of what you've heard here tonight. You know, just like Congress funds the Supreme Court, the county commissioners fund the Court of Common Pleas in counties. But they have, you know, pretty specific requirements, and they want those requirements to be documented. I'm just telling you from my short experience over there.
Because I think that would solve a lot of problems, but again, maybe
Yeah.
it'd be a big, I don't know, to do.
Well, you know what, I can tell you right now that, that all of us have gotten into, you know, hit some friction points with the judges and the courts. That's
Yeah, I know
probably
you gotta be
all I'm
careful
gonna
what you
say.
say, yeah, I understand.
But in the end, there are elected representatives to make that decision. Correct.
They do, you know, spend the money, but they have a requirement to fund the courts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But if they said, well, we're only gonna fund it, they wanna fund 2 shifts, the judge would have to go by it, right? Is that correct?
Well, the commissioners could take the late shift and then we can all go to the meetings.
No, I'm not talking about that. If I understand you, and I'm not trying to give you guys a hard time, this is because we need more space in the courthouse. If that's what I've read in the Meadville paper and the Titusville paper. So if you keep it open longer, there's no reason people, I mean, I know hundreds of businesses around the county that are open more than 8 to 5 or something. Again, I'm not trying to be argumentative, I don't know if that's ever been considered. And if it's true what you say, the judges would have a fit, then I guess they have more power than maybe what they should.
Well, Bill lives this.
I'm a lawyer, so I work in the courthouse occasionally. I'm the solicitor for the Prothonotary, and the space problem is not for people, it's for paper. The Supreme Court of Pennsylvania requires us to file, anytime we have a 1-sheet motion, we have to attach a cover sheet to it and a page for the court administrator, so we have 3 pages for it. Every 1 page we file. We have tons of paper. They've got it stored in garages, which means the Prothonotary employees have to, in the middle of the winter, twice a day, put on their coats, put on their boots, walk across the street, get the stuff, come back, take off their coat, take off their boots, waste their time just to get the papers that they're required to have.
What?
So it's not that there's an empty room sitting all night, it's full of paper.
But what about the
It's not gonna
ceilings?
go away.
There's tall ceilings over there, they could put make it organized, you could stack it to the
They're
ceiling.
not quite that high. I hear you saying that. In the basement, they're not high at all. Many of the papers are now in the attic. In fact, you have to bend over. If you stand up, the nails from the shingles will get you. So if you haven't seen the storage problems, you really do. But it's not that there are large empty offices sitting vacant all night. I can guarantee you that.
And we brought pictures.
There's a notebook over here that has pictures of the boxes in the attic, and
Bruce,
clock tower, and
thank you.
Thanks for letting me ramble a little bit.
No problem. Hey, that's all the questions that I have. I'm gonna turn it back over to the commissioners, Commissioner Wierspan, for any kind of final comments. And of course, these pictures and this information is up here for you to look at. Thank you.
I'd just like again, thank everybody for coming tonight, and we certainly do appreciate your comments and your thoughts, and as I said earlier, no decision's been made yet on this plan. There'll probably still be some tweaking. We've been talking to the judge, and he's got some ideas to make some more changes here, so we'll be working with him here in the next couple of weeks. But I guess that's about all I have to share. I would encourage you to take a look at this notebook over here. It'll describe what Mr. Moore was talking about the storage of paper, and lots of paper. But I would either my fellow commissioners, if they'd like to make a comment.
I'd just like to say thanks for coming as well, and just a couple of quick thoughts. And if you go back and look at the Talon, I mean, the Talon was losing money rapidly. I mean, it really was, from a redevelopment project for the city. Whether it was right or wrong to buy the thing, it's still a redevelopment project, but it's not with the county. The bulk of the money that's been spent on Talon, or for things that would have happened anyways, because there was, maybe Jim can speak to that, there was a limited market for the Talon facility. And one building was falling down. So the asbestos containing material separation of utilities, we separated the utilities on the buildings, and a lot of the work that went into demo building C, and a lot of the work that went into the architectural side has been plowed into what we're doing down at the Diamond. So, I mean, yeah, there was money spent, there's no doubt, and there was also sort of a obligation to look that thing through because the results of the AC did indicate that it's a viable project. So it's always better to make a change on paper than it is to make a change with bricks and mortar down the line. The other thing I would just say to echo Chairman Wiederspan's comments is this is not a done deal. It's substantially in the form of. There's a goodly amount of work to do, particularly as it relates to finances. And you have to have something to talk about, obviously, when you get out there. And so everything that has been done, bringing us up to this point, has been thoughtful, with purposeful intent. There was not money thrown at this to see what would happen. And we did shift gears, there's no doubt about it. And I think we're all comfortable with, for the most part, with doing that. And when you collaborate and corroborate with the courts, it's sometimes a messy process. I think Dick said it best, when you do that, everybody walks away a little less happier than they walked in the room. But the bottom line is, I'm sure the same things went on in the 1950s when they did the building that is the current courthouse that had about a 30-year plan to it. And it's long surpassed that. This can has been kicked down the road for decades, really, in some respects. And it's only gotten worse in the last few years when you couple it with the lack of maintenance. So you've really got a problem. And you can kick that can down the road as well. But I think, speaking for myself and certainly sharing good time, and I think we're on a good trajectory to overcome that problem. It's not easy to do. And it's not a foregone conclusion it's going to be like this or that. So that's why we're soliciting your input. And thanks for coming out.
I guess just ditto there. If you have any other comments, call us.
We have your email addresses, right, on that sheet? I think so, yes. Things come through. And share stuff, information-wise, with other people.
Is there any way to maybe get a little more information over here in Titusville, or do you have to talk to the newspaper over here for that?
Okay, right there in the back of the room.
Tomorrow morning, if you listen to the stream, around 8:30, you'll see Commissioner Lynch on here.
I'm at work by then, so, yeah.
We come over every month, once a month, usually about the middle of the month on a Wednesday morning, one way. But that's all I thank you.
Again, I'm not for it, it's not any so, I mean, there's plenty of oil houses. So what, you don't want to drive through this, there's no more oil. Oh, so that's kind of upset, okay. We have this tax, so we got like a you did for all.